When Jeanette met this lady that sung the song, and Jeanette said, "Oh man, your music is so amazing. She said, oh, what'd you say?"
I said, "You're so amazing." And she came back to me and she said,
"Yes, I am." Meaning, if you don't accept what you are, then you always forever live in the shadow of who people imagine you are and who you allow them to let you think that you are. And always they want it to be lower than them, so this leads to a lack of really self-encouragement, self-motivation. So a person becomes trapped because if they're not getting motivation from themselves, and they're also not getting it from others, because that's the drawback. Like if you need somebody to tell you every day you look great, you look amazing, if you need somebody to do all of that for you to feel encouraged, then you're really screwed unless you got a lot of cash, because that's generally the only time somebody can waste that much energy on someone else. So that being said, obviously there's a little bit more people here at Secret Beach than others. If I say, well, what's sovereignty? Well, maybe I don't know what that is right now, but if I look in the dictionary, I can see what is the opposite of that and say, oh, well, I've been to the opposite of that, and then flip that experience. So every time that I've been put through anything against my own will, the opposite of that is sovereignty. So then I would want to get myself to that as soon as possible. Now this then would lay out an arraignment, the battlefield itself. Because if we want to talk about, well, what are the first steps? The first steps is the diet. That's why in any training, they always take you through the diet or something about the food that's really serious, a really serious training. They're going to say something about the food before it's over, because that's what you're going to go do when it's over. You're going to go eat. And it starts there. It's like when you're eating the wrong things, no matter what a person is saying, you're processing it through those filters, those dirty lenses. So that's also goes for both parties. Like when you're telling somebody something they're processing that through dirty lenses, unless they really want it, you can't be trying to force it on them, especially if they're rejecting it and they're agitated about it. So I learned that. Jeanette taught me that. It's like if they're agitated about it, you think that you're getting it across and you're doing your just desserts. And I think a lot of that comes from the whole Christianity mindset, because they're always trying to, like, it's like a victory to get somebody converted completely, but converted into what? Right? Like serious. So continuously going with that is like understanding, okay, so that first level is the body. Get in the proper foods. It's a basic concept to get lighter. You're just trying to get out of the negatives. As we talked about, like you don't just get to zero and you're done. When people lose a lot of energy, they go into the negatives and then they go further down and deeper down into more distortion. So to pull yourself out of that, it's like a ship. You got to drop stuff out of your cargo. But also notice when people try to do that, they realize then the hold of the animal forces. Like we think, like as human beings, you're running into this jungle or whatever, like as the first human, that there are not, I mean, you can't get a few meters before something's already descending upon you. It's maybe the insects have gotten you before you've gotten up to the beach. That's what you're talking about on Earth. So what we are, we've kind of carved our way into this planet, but I'm just wanting everybody to see from the generous respect alone, these animals, though, they still hold power. They're like, okay, well, we're going to have some level of control because they've always had control. This is built on them, larger forms, right? So because of that, these larger forms we're going to be kind of pinned to with our organs, with our blood types, all these different things. We're going to be kind of like pegged to sharing energy with those forces unless we can take our body through a transformation, a terrain modification where you start being able to really sustain yourself on other things. Like some people, if they eat vegetables only, they'll wither away. Some people, if they start trying to get on just like fasting and water, it's difficult. But the truth is that it's a process. You find it's not just one thing. You find other elements, right? Like, so you want to at least make sure you're balancing it out. So that's the first thing, your fuel supply. You're trying to turn chicken into something that's going to make you sovereign. You can see how that's not going to end up working out. If you're gonna work with seaweeds, if you're gonna work with celeries, if you're gonna work with mangoes, if you're gonna work with non-GMO foods, if you're gonna work with clean water, now these are all great fuel supplies. So that's the first level of sovereignty, is controlling your intake, right? So then things start to become more clear in the consciousness as the filter is clean. Then we can start talking about the next stage, which is really more like a mental spiritual thing. And the mental spiritual is basically a basic binding done by the governing parties that are responsible for keeping 9 billion people in check, 8.5 billion people in check, that they've set up several systems to keep the minds under control. And one of the most strongest systems, period, where you would have to go first, is what we would think is the highest aspect of things, and that's God. So there's a whole story about God, how that's actually a word that I talk about, and how that's a king. But what it boils down to is that in this society, it's very important for you to see them as God. So that way, the highest you could ever reach is still going to go in the service of them. That's how they design now the game. So obviously, if you're sharing energy with that, like when a person's praying, now they're using different levels of their own spiritual faculties, and they're sending energy somewhere, and they're asking for something. Now, because we're spiritual beings, this is a very powerful action. So a lot of stuff is happening. So that's the thing. If a person's already on this level, they have no clue. Even if they need to go through the first part of what I'm saying, they have no clue of how imperative it is to really be concerned about where you're sending your energy, your prayers, and just those whole dynamics. So that's the first 2 steps. I guess that's the basics, is first starting with that rather than walking them all the way up the ladder to how you move from grains. You know, try the grains instead of meat sometimes. Think about it. It's like the next on the chain. It's often forgotten. Think about the food pyramid. It's the meat and then the grains, not the vegetables. The vegetables come next. So sometimes people could get to the grains next, and it's more fulfilling for them as they make their transitions. Or the grains is cool to stay in. Why are you doing that? To get out of the vortex. And then once you get enough energy to get out of the vortex, all this stuff starts making more sense. So in conclusion, what is sovereignty? It's to be in full control of your power. That there's nothing that you need to draw power from externally. You can generate all this power within. To do that, both of your sides, if you may, need to be in harmony. So that way you can activate the center column of your consciousness, which will create a balance. And as a wheel that spins, since there's an oar around it spinning like this, even the Muslims, when they get into deep prayer, they start moving like this, and it becomes natural. Even the Orthodox Jews that go into they do this because it becomes natural, because your aura is like, you ever done that with a hula hoop? You know, you just start doing that. This naturally happens when you start to really meditate and build up your field, and it's because you have a whole gyroscope spinning around. And like I said, that energetic system, once coming online and spinning up enough, you can actually, basically you stand like a top. And because there's no, some people wonder, how do I live forever? How could I be here forever? How can I, like that? But few people have achieved it. Standing in perfect balance with yourself, caring about yourself and loving yourself enough to know that if you're getting mad and upset or angry for any reason, you're destroying the greatest thing that you could ever have. You. It's real talk. Anytime you can self-destruct yourself and put yourself into frequencies that you don't like to feel, that's all it right there. And if you can't see it, if you can't stop it, that even lets you see more of just how crazy it's gotten, like how deep you are into the well, right? So this is it. Like, that's why it's so serious, this life, because if you're on the high levels, you could be like la-da-dee-da,